What happens when two of television's most beloved personalities sit down for what should be a friendly chat, and it turns into one of the most uncomfortable interviews in daytime TV history. Today, we're breaking down the moment that shocked everyone watching live when a simple question spiraled into a confrontation that ended with security getting involved and one very famous guest being escorted out of the studio. Before we get into what went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what you think really caused this whole situation to explode the way it did. Now let's get into it. Kelly Clarkson welcomed Valerie Bertinelli onto her show with her usual warmth and enthusiasm. The audience clapping as Valerie walked out in a burgundy blazer and jeans, waving to the crowd with that familiar smile everyone knows from years of television. They hugged. Valerie sat down. And Kelly kicked things off with what seemed like easy conversation about cooking, about Valerie's latest projects, about life in general. The audience was engaged, laughing at the right moments, and everything felt perfectly normal. That lasted about 7 minutes. Kelly leaned forward in her chair, her expression shifting to something more serious, more journalistic. She said, "Valerie, I want to ask you about something that's been all over social media lately. There are people saying that some of your recent comments about wellness and body image have been problematic, especially coming from someone who's been so open about their own struggles. How do you respond to that criticism?" Valerie's smile faded. She tilted her head slightly, her jaw tightening just enough for the camera to catch it. She said, "Kelly, I think that's a really unfair characterization of what I've actually said. I've been very careful, very intentional about my messaging, and I think anyone who's actually listened to my full interviews rather than just reading headlines would understand that." Kelly nodded, but her expression didn't change. She said, "I hear you, but the criticism isn't just coming from headlines. There are actual health professionals who have expressed concern about some of the language you've used. Do you think there's any validity to what they're saying, or do you think this is completely blown out of proportion?" The audience went quiet. Valerie sat back in her chair, crossing her arms. She said, "I think we live in a time where people are looking for reasons to be offended, looking for reasons to tear down women who are just trying to share their experiences. I've never claimed to be a doctor. I've never told anyone what to do with their bodies. I've shared my story, and apparently that's controversial now." Kelly's eyebrows raised slightly. She said, "But Valerie, when you have a platform as big as yours, don't you think there's a responsibility that comes with that? Especially when you're talking about topics as sensitive as eating and body image. I mean, young people are watching. People who are struggling are watching, and words matter in those contexts." Valerie uncrossed her arms and leaned forward, her voice taking on an edge that wasn't there before. She said, "Kelly, with all due respect, I've been in this industry for over 40 years. I've navigated these conversations long before social media existed. I don't need a lecture about responsibility from someone who quite frankly hasn't walked in my shoes." The tension in the studio was palpable. Now Kelly's expression hardened. She said, "I'm not lecturing you, Valerie. I'm asking you a legitimate question that I think a lot of people want answered. And I have to say, I'm a little surprised by your defensiveness here." Valerie let out a short laugh that had no humor in it. She said, "Defensiveness? Kelly, you invited me here under the pretense of a friendly conversation about my cookbook and my life, and instead you're ambushing me with gotcha questions like this is some kind of investigative journalism. That's not defensiveness. That's me calling out what this actually is." Kelly shook her head, her voice remaining calm but firm. She said, "This isn't an ambush, Valerie. These are questions that are being asked publicly, and I thought you'd want the opportunity to address them directly instead of through publicists and carefully worded social media posts. Isn't that what interviews are supposed to be about? Having real conversations." Valerie stood up. The audience gasped. She said, "Real conversations, Kelly? You don't want a real conversation. You want a viral moment. You want me to break down or apologize for things I don't believe I need to apologize for so you can get your clicks and your views. I've been doing this too long to fall for that." Kelly stood as well, her voice rising slightly. She said, "Valerie, that is completely unfair. I have built my entire show on having honest, authentic conversations with people. I'm not trying to gotcha anyone. I'm trying to understand your perspective, but you're not even willing to engage with the question." Valerie pointed at Kelly, her voice sharp. She said, "You know what, Kelly? You sit here in your perfect little studio with your perfect little audience, and you judge people. You act like you're America's sweetheart who can do no wrong, but you're just like everyone else in this business. You're using people for content, and I'm done being your content for today. The audience was completely silent now, the cameras still rolling. Kelly's face flushed red. She said, I'm using you for content? Valerie, you came on my show. You agreed to this interview. And frankly, if you can't handle being asked about things you've said publicly, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews at all. Valerie grabbed her purse from beside the chair. She said, maybe you're right, Kelly. Maybe I shouldn't be doing interviews where the host has already decided I'm guilty before I even sit down. This was a mistake. Kelly crossed her arms. She said, running away from the conversation doesn't make the criticism go away. At some point, you're going to have to actually address this instead of attacking anyone who brings it up. Valerie turned to face Kelly directly. Stepping closer, she said, I'm not running from anything. I'm removing myself from a hostile environment that was set up to make me look bad. There's a difference, and you know it. Kelly took a step back, her voice measured, but you could hear the frustration breaking through. She said, Valerie, nobody set anything up to make you look bad. You're making yourself look bad right now by refusing to engage with legitimate criticism. I've had hundreds of guests on this show, and we've tackled difficult topics before. The difference is they were willing to have the conversation. Valerie's eyes narrowed. She said, don't patronize me, Kelly. You think because you've had a talk show for a few years that you know how this works. I've been on more shows than you've probably watched. I know exactly what this is, and I know when someone is trying to make an example out of me. Kelly threw her hands up. She said, make an example. Valerie, you're not a victim here. You said things publicly that sparked a conversation. A conversation that involves real concerns from real people. All I did was ask you about it. That's literally my job. Valerie laughed again, that same bitter sound. She said, your job is to entertain, Kelly. Your job is to make people feel good and sell products during commercial breaks. Don't act like you're some kind of hard-hitting journalist holding people accountable. You're a talk show host who used to be a singer, and a good one at that, but that doesn't make you Barbara Walters. The audience let out a collective gasp at that one. Kelly's face went from flushed to pale, her mouth opening slightly before she composed herself. She said, wow, okay. So now we're just going to insult each other instead of having an actual discussion. That's where we are. Valerie set her purse back down and crossed her arms, mirroring Kelly's earlier posture. She said, you started this, Kelly. You brought me here under false pretenses. You asked loaded questions designed to put me on the defensive, and now you're upset that I'm not playing along. What did you expect would happen? Kelly's voice rose, no longer trying to maintain that professional calm. She said, I expected you to be able to defend your own words. I expected you to have thought through what you were saying before you said it publicly. I expected you to take some accountability instead of blaming everyone else for misunderstanding you. That's what I expected. Valerie stepped closer to Kelly again, her voice dropping lower but somehow more intense. She said, you want accountability? Let's talk about accountability, Kelly. Let's talk about how you've built your entire brand on being relatable and down to earth. But you live in a mansion and have a team of people managing every aspect of your life. Let's talk about how you preach authenticity while reading off teleprompters and following scripts written by producers. Where's your accountability? Kelly's jaw dropped. She said, that has nothing to do with anything we're talking about. You're deflecting because you know you don't have a good answer to the actual question. Valerie shook her head. She said, no, Kelly. I'm pointing out the hypocrisy of you sitting here judging me when you're just as manufactured as anyone else in this business. The only difference is you've convinced people that you're not. Kelly pointed at Valerie, her hands shaking slightly. She said, I have never claimed to be perfect. I've talked openly about my struggles, my mistakes, my journey. But what I don't do is spread potentially harmful messages about health and wellness, and then act offended when people call it out. That's the difference between us. Valerie's voice went cold. She said, the difference between us, Kelly, is that I've earned my place through decades of work, through ups and downs, through public scrutiny that you can't even imagine. You got a golden ticket from a singing competition and rode that wave straight to where you are now. Don't lecture me about earning anything. The audience was murmuring now, some people looking uncomfortable, others leaning forward to catch every word. Kelly's eyes were blazing. She said, a golden ticket? I've worked my tail off for everything I have. I've put out albums. I've done tours. I've built this show from the ground up. How dare you diminish that because you're mad that I asked you a tough question? Valerie picked up her purse again. She said, I'm not mad, Kelly. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that someone I thought was better than this, someone I thought understood what it's like to be a woman in this industry, would pull this kind of stunt for ratings. It's beneath you. Or at least I thought it was. Kelly's voice cracked slightly. She said, "This isn't a stunt, Valerie. This is me trying to do my job with integrity. I'm sorry if that makes you uncomfortable, but I'm not going to softball questions just because someone is famous or has been around for a long time. Everyone deserves to be asked the hard questions, including you. Including me." Valerie turned toward the exit. She said, "Then ask yourself some hard questions, Kelly. Ask yourself if this is really the kind of show you want to run. Ask yourself if ambushing guests is really the legacy you want to leave. I hope you can live with the answers." Kelly called after her. She said, "Valerie, don't walk out. We can finish this conversation like adults. You don't have to run away." Valerie stopped and turned back around, her voice rising now too. She said, "I'm not running away. I'm choosing not to participate in your circus anymore. There's a difference. And the fact that you can't see that says everything about where you are right now." Kelly walked toward her. She said, "My circus? Valerie, you're the one making a scene. You're the one who couldn't handle a simple question and turned this into whatever this is. Own that at least." Valerie's face went red. She said, "A simple question? Kelly, there was nothing simple about what you did. You came at me with an agenda, with a narrative already written in your head. And when I didn't follow your script, you got defensive. That's not journalism. That's not even good television. That's just mean." Kelly stopped walking, standing about 10 feet from Valerie now. She said, "Mean? I've been nothing but respectful to you. I asked a question. You attacked me personally. You insulted my career. You questioned my integrity. And I'm the mean one? Are you hearing yourself right now?" Valerie's voice was shaking with anger. She said, "You ambushed me on national television, Kelly. You made me look like I'm some kind of villain who doesn't care about people's health. You twisted everything I've said and done into something ugly. And you did it with a smile on your face, which somehow makes it worse." Kelly's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed strong. She said, "I didn't twist anything, Valerie. I asked you about things you actually said. If you don't like how that sounds when it's repeated back to you, maybe that's something you need to think about. Maybe that's the real issue here." Valerie wiped at her own eyes. The whether from anger or hurt wasn't clear. She said, "You know what, Kelly, you're right. Maybe I do need to think about things. Maybe I need to think about why I thought coming here was a good idea. Maybe I need to think about who I can trust in this industry. And clearly, you're not on that list anymore." Kelly's voice went quiet, almost a whisper that the microphones barely picked up. She said, "That's really how you want to leave this? After everything, after years of being colleagues, of being in the same circles, you're going to burn this bridge?" Valerie stepped closer again, and now they were face to face, maybe 3 feet apart. She said, "You didn't ask me a difficult question, Kelly. You put me in an impossible position where anything I said would be used against me. You wanted me to either gravel and apologize for things taken out of context or look defensive and difficult. Those were my only 2 options, and you knew it when you planned this." Kelly shook her head, tears streaming down her face now. She said, "That's not true. I gave you every opportunity to explain yourself, to clarify your position, to help people understand where you're coming from. You chose to attack me instead. You chose to make this personal, not me." Valerie's voice was now sharp. She said, "It became personal the moment you decided to use our friendship, or what I thought was a friendship, to lure me into this trap. You think I don't know how this works? You think I don't know that you and your producers sat in a room and strategized about how to get the most dramatic moment out of me? I've been played before, Kelly, but I never thought you'd be the one doing it." Kelly wiped her face with the back of her hand. She said, "We're not friends, Valerie. We're friendly. We're colleagues. We're professionals in the same industry. But friends have real conversations. Friends tell each other the truth, even when it's hard. And if we were friends, you'd know that I would never ever intentionally hurt someone I cared about." Valerie laughed, and this time it was almost hysterical. She said, "You're hurting me right now, Kelly. Right now in front of all these people, in front of cameras that are going to replay this moment over and over again. You're hurting me, and you're acting like you're the victim in this situation. That's what's so twisted about this whole thing." Kelly's voice rose again. She said, "I'm not acting like a victim. I'm standing here trying to have a conversation with you, and you keep attacking me. You keep making this about me instead of about the actual issue. The issue isn't me, Valerie. The issue is what you said and whether you stand by it. Valerie threw her hands up. She said, fine. You want an answer? Here's your answer. I stand by everything I've said. I stand by my journey, my experiences, my right to share my story. I don't stand by how it's been twisted and manipulated by people with agendas, which apparently includes you. Now, is that what you wanted to hear? Kelly crossed her arms again. She said, what I wanted to hear was some acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, you could have been more careful with your words, that maybe you understand why people are concerned, that maybe you care more about the impact of your message than about being right, but clearly that's too much to ask. Valerie's voice dropped to almost a growl. She said, you want me to apologize for existing, Kelly? You want me to apologize for being human and imperfect and figuring things out as I go? You want me to gravel because some people decided to be offended by my honesty? I won't do it. I won't apologize for being real. Kelly uncrossed her arms and held them out. She said, nobody's asking you to apologize for being human. They're asking you to take responsibility for your platform and your influence. There's a difference. And if you can't see that, then I don't know what else to say to you. Valerie picked up her purse for the third time, and this time her movements were deliberate. Final, she said. Then don't say anything else, Kelly. We're done here. This interview is over. This conversation is over. And honestly, whatever relationship we had is over too. I hope it was worth it. Kelly's voice broke completely now. She said, Valerie, please don't do this. Don't leave like this. We can work through this. We can find a way to understand each other. Valerie turned her back to Kelly and started walking toward the exit. She said, there's nothing to work through. You showed me who you really are today, and I believe you. Have a nice show, Kelly. Kelly called out louder now. She said, Valerie, you can't just walk off my show. We're in the middle of a taping. We have an audience here. You can't just leave. Valerie kept walking, not turning around. She said, watch me. Kelly looked at the producers off camera, her expression desperate and furious at the same time. She said, someone stop her. We're not done here. This isn't how this ends. 2 security guards appeared from the wings, moving to intercept Valerie's path to the exit. One of them, a tall man with an earpiece, held up his hand. He said, ma'am, we need you to return to the stage. We can't let you leave until the show is over. Valerie stopped, staring at the guards, then back at Kelly. Her voice was ice cold. She said, are you serious right now? You're having me detained. Kelly walked toward them. She said, I'm not having you detained. I'm asking you to stay and finish what we started. We can take a break. We can regroup, but we need to finish this properly. Valerie looked at the guards again. She said, get out of my way. The security guard shifted uncomfortably. He said, ma'am, I'm just doing my job. If you could please return to the stage. Valerie raised her voice. She said, I said get out of my way. I'm leaving. You can't keep me here against my will. That's called kidnapping. Kelly stepped between Valerie and the guards. She said, nobody's kidnapping anyone, Valerie. Stop being so dramatic. Just come back. Sit down and we'll figure this out. Valerie looked Kelly directly in the eyes. She said, move, Kelly. I'm warning you. Kelly stood her ground. She said, or what? What are you going to do, Valerie? For a moment, everything froze. The audience held their breath. The cameras kept rolling. Then Valerie pushed past Kelly, not violently, but firmly enough that Kelly stumbled backward. The guards immediately stepped forward, each taking one of Valerie's arms. She struggled against them. She said, get your hands off me. Let me go. This is assault. Kelly stepped back, her hand over her mouth, looking shocked at what was happening. She said, wait, stop. Let her go. Just let her go. But the guards were already escorting Valerie toward the exit, her purse falling to the floor as she continued to struggle. She was shouting now. She said, you're going to regret this, Kelly. All of you are going to regret this. This is going to be everywhere. Everyone is going to know what you did here today. The audience was in complete chaos. Some people standing, some crying, some filming on their phones. Despite the no-phone policy, Kelly stood frozen in the center of the stage, watching as Valerie was led through the exit doors. When the doors closed behind them, Kelly turned to face the audience. Her face was wet with tears, her voice shaking. She said, I'm so sorry you all had to see that. That was never supposed to happen like that. We're going to take a break. The cameras kept rolling for another 10 seconds before finally cutting away. So there you have it. one of the most intense, uncomfortable, and shocking moments in daytime television history. A conversation that started with a legitimate question and ended with a celebrity being escorted out by security. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and drop a comment below answering this question. Do you think Kelly was right to press Valerie on those issues? Or do you think Valerie was justified in feeling ambushed? Let me know what you think.